Hello and welcome to today's Econelastic video, in which we're going to be covering an introduction to unemployment. So the aim of this video is for you to understand the trends around unemployment and some of the ways that we can measure it. So unemployment, you'll find, is highly correlated with the business cycle. So if you haven't watched our previous video on the business cycle, then we would recommend you check that out first. We'll leave a link in the comment section down below, just to feed into this video a little bit better.
Yeah. So the general trends of unemployment. So in recessions, such as the financial crisis and the current COVID pandemic, unemployment tends to rise. And in boom years, such as the post-financial crisis, unemployment tends to decrease.
So we've actually made a graph for you, and it covers UK and USA unemployment from the years 1983 to 2019. And you can see that, like we said, there are clear cycles of unemployment, high unemployment, followed by lower unemployment. And we can see this during the early 1980s, again in the early 1990s, again in the late 2000s, around the financial crisis. And if this data was to include 2020 and 2021, we'd again see that both of those lines start to creep up again.
Yeah.
So each one of those events in the years leading up to that high unemployment, there were a sequence of events that led to that. And it would be a good exercise for you to go away, research maybe what caused the higher unemployment, and just see if you can logically follow the sequence of events that led to that high unemployment. That would be a good exercise for you.
Yeah, and just to point out, obviously, how highly correlated really the unemployment rates are between the UK and the US. I mean, obviously, you can see pretty much they track one another. One's higher than the other or lower than the other, but they move in pretty much the same direction. And I think it's probably more interesting to point out that how that's converged, since around about 2013 to now, really, 2019 on the graph, how close they are in percentages.
They've almost become one line at this point, haven't they?
Yeah. So we can measure unemployment in a couple of ways. So either as gross number, so there are 2.3 million people unemployed, or as a percentage, which obviously provides a much more accurate and relative outlook. So let's explain which people are included when measuring unemployment. Put simply, is anyone actually actively looking for a job? So therefore, we obviously don't include children and pensioners, or people who've chosen not to work, i.e. stay-at-home parents. So it's the labour force that can work and are willing to work, essentially.
So to work out unemployment as a percentage, it must be a percentage of the total labour force. And the total labour force includes the number of people employed plus the number of people unemployed. So if I was to work through an example, just a relatively easy example, if you got a pen and paper, you could work this out along with me. If there was 25 million people in employment and there was 1.5 million people unemployed, so the total labour force is 26.5 million people, the unemployment rate as a percentage would be 5.66%. So that would be 1.5 million over 26.5 million. You times that by 100 and it'll give you 5.66%.
Yeah. And like we said before, obviously with the percentages, it's a lot more accurate because, you can have a really high number of unemployed people, and you could look at a country and go, oh my God, that's a ridiculous amount of people unemployed.
Yeah, but if their population is huge, it might be actually relatively small.
Yeah, compared with another country, for instance. So moving on, there are two ways of measuring unemployment that are used in official statistics. So the first one is called claimant unemployment. This can be classed as anyone that receives unemployment benefits. In the UK, this is referred to job seekers allowance. In the US, they simply call this unemployment benefits. So claimant unemployment rates are highly dependent on government criteria. So such as your national insurance contributions or your income and savings. Therefore, this measure is often understated.
So, given the fact it has some flaws, the second way of measuring unemployment is known as the standardised unemployment rate. So, having recognised the drawbacks of the claimant unemployment rate, since 1998, actually, the UK government has used the standardised measure as the only way they measure unemployment. Or the main way that they measure unemployment. So this captures actually anyone who falls under the standard definition of unemployment, which we covered earlier. So out of work and actively seeking another job. So how long someone remains unemployed for can be dependent on a few factors. So one being the number of people unemployed. So if you were to go back to the graph we showed you before, and you were looking in the financial crisis period where unemployment is high, that means a lot more people are going to be applying for the same number or the same job. There's going to be more people looking for jobs. So it's going to be a lot more competitive, and therefore it might be harder and take you longer to get a job again. The second thing is obviously the business cycle. So like we explained, in periods of recession, you have high unemployment. It's going to be harder to get a job. In periods of boom, there's generally low unemployment. There's generally more jobs available. And finally, the flow into and out of what is known as the pool of unemployment. So it's a fairly self-explanatory graph, and we're going to put that on the screen for you. If you do want to examine that a little closer, just pause the screen here and take a look over that.
So if you've had a look at that graph, let's move on. So let's move to the unemployment rates can obviously vary massively with different demographics and groups. So for example, regional, there's sort of been a historical north-south sort of divide and different unemployment rates, especially labour, mining strikes. Obviously, unemployment rates in the north would be a lot higher than they would be in the south. I think that's probably a good example. Another one, during the financial crisis, I know Derby had a pretty good unemployment rate, as in low, purely for the fact that it's got a lot of jobs in manufacturing and a lot of jobs in Rolls-Royce, and they kept a lot of people on. So they had a relatively good unemployment rate. You got different unemployment rate between genders, age groups, ethnicity, and sectors and industries within themselves. So we've got a couple of examples. Right now, the retail landscape is under significant pressure. However, you've still got companies and then sectors within that are still doing well. So supermarkets, for example, unemployment rate in that area would be going down because obviously they're the only thing you can go and do.
So what you're emphasising there is the fact that even within the same industry, retail industry, there's different parts of that are going to be doing better than others. Like say supermarkets will probably be experiencing low unemployment. If you go to brick and mortar stores, high street stores, fashion brands that aren't deemed essential, they're going to have pretty high unemployment at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And then even with, the likes of Amazon, obviously they're hiring people, everyone's doing online shopping. Again, not an old-fashioned retailer, but it's still essentially a retailer, and they're doing amazingly well. And so obviously unemployment rates in that area of business, of online shopping, is, again, going through the roof. compared to bricks and mortar, which are obviously struggling. So they got some examples of different employment rates.
So we hope you understand, the relationship between the business cycle and unemployment. They are highly correlated. Some of the different ways that we can measure unemployment, and some of the factors that determine how long you may remain unemployed for. As usual, if you do want to leave us a question in the comment section, we'll do our best to get back to that. And we hope to see you in the next video.
Yeah, thanks for watching.